So I'm taking us to Ravens Twitter calling out Ryan Clark, and I think that they have a point. Okay, but before I pull out what Ryan Clark said, I need to give a little context. Recently, Chris Canty, former Raven, who's become a big name in the podcast kind of radio world, had something to say for Joe Burrow, which maybe he went a little bit hard, but I think there's some truth to his point. So I want to bring in the context of what Ryan Clark will be responding to. Here is Chris Canty talking about Burrow's elite status among NFL QBs today.
Chris Canty had this to say if Burrow misses yet another postseason.
Joe Burrow played GM this offseason. If it doesn't work out for the Cincinnati Bengals, if they go a third straight year of not making the playoffs, then all of a sudden Joe Burrow is, his status as a quote-unquote elite quarterback in the eyes of most has to change. All of a sudden he gets relegated to that second tier of quarterbacks.
Listen, I think you and I have a healthy respect for Joe Burrow as much as you can have for an AFC North rival. And yet I think what Chris Canty is saying here, it has some validity. Like, you can't keep being, it's kind of like Justin Herbert. Everybody loves all the tools he has. What a great passer he is, this and that. But the Chargers just don't make it to the playoffs that often. They're just not winning enough. And so Burrow has obviously won more. He's taken his team further in the past, but it's many years removed. And so what Canty is saying is like, hey, if there's a third season where you miss the playoffs, is it fair to say, okay, maybe you don't belong in that number one elite tier? And honestly, he's probably number two because it's kind of Patrick Mahomes by himself. And then everybody puts Lamar and Allen and Burrow together. But like, whenever Allen and Lamar are healthy, you don't even have to like wonder if they're going to make the playoffs. You do with Burrow. Do you feel like that's fair that he should be dropped a tier if for a third year in a row they miss the playoffs?
I think it's reasonable. And I guess it's fair if it's reasonable, because he's onto something here with the advocating that Joe did this offseason. He put on his GM hat, if you will. And I don't know if there was another player, Sarah, who did it as loudly as he did. I mean, he put his foot down and used every single ounce of leverage that he has and had throughout the process as the franchise quarterback. That's going to add a level of pressure to not only him, but the entire team this upcoming season, because his ownership listened. Now, they haven't listened with Trey Hendrickson yet, but they feel like they have some ground to stand on there, as Trey does as well. But how much ground is that? We'll see, because he just reported to camp. At least that was the report this week. So I think that's reasonable. The level of respect I have for him, which is what you referenced a second ago, there's a lot of layers to my respect for him. I think he's surgical. I think he's big time in big time moments. I think his postseason playoff record and tape that he's put out there backs that up. In the head-to-heads with Lamar, we know who's had the upper hand.
Right.
We've seen that time and time again. It's been the Ravens and Lamar who have dominated this team, as they really have pre and post Joe Burrow, or mid Joe Burrow, throughout the Lamar era. And ultimately, he's going to end up being 4 years removed from that Super Bowl run at some point soon.
Can't be riding on that forever.
It's been a long time, and we know that he's been living off that.
Yeah.
Again, this is not to take away with what he put forward last year. He should have received MVP votes. The difference between he and Lamar, one player was able to overcome their Achilles heel, the other wasn't. And the latter of those two was Joe Burrow.
Okay, so that brings us to Ryan Clark. Both you and I feel like Canty has some ground to stand on. And by the way, I do want to say, I don't think it's crazy that like his front office listened to him in signing, of course, Jamar Chase, to put even more money in the receiver room. I feel like all those same analysts were saying, yeah, you got to do it. You can't let him walk. And so I don't think it's crazy that that this quarterback was campaigning for these wide receivers. He probably has the best. Yeah, he's got the best wide receiver room. He does. And so it's not crazy what Canty said. Ryan Clark acted like it was crazy. But in my view, what Ryan Clark said to dispute it, this to me is getting crazy. Here we go.
Joe Burrow takes none of the blame.
Let me just play that one more time. And this is where Ravens fans, I will play it longer, but this is where Ravens fans get angry. Lamar Jackson is not the problem in Baltimore either. But you can always point out where Lamar Jackson can be better. Is Lamar Jackson the number one problem in Baltimore? Absolutely not. Is Joe Burrow the number one problem in Cincinnati? Absolutely not. And when I call him a problem, I mean, these guys are phenomenal. I'm talking about in terms of winning a Super Bowl. Okay. Neither one are the number one problem. But to say, you could never say Lamar Jackson has zero part of the blame. How in the world can you say Burrow has no part of the blame? No part, Ryan? Oh.
Joe Burrow takes none of the blame for the Cincinnati Bengals not making it to the playoffs. Let's just think about the seasons Joe Burrow has actually finished. In 2 of those seasons, you go to the AFC Championships. In 1 of those seasons, you advance. And then you look at last year, and he's the best quarterback in the world, and it's not a conversation. And Joe Burrow,
best quarterback in the world. Best quarterback in the world last season. The hyperbole is strong with this clip. Okay, keep going.
Didn't play general manager. What Joe Burrow did is what the greatest players can always do. They can say, hey, I want this. And because they want it, teams understand we better make this dude happy. And in making him happy, he begins to pay dividends on the field for us. And the other piece of it is this. You should have wanted to keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. You should want to keep Trey Hendrickson. Those are the best 3 players on your team outside of Joe Burrow. And I don't understand Chris's incessant need to make us not believe in Joe Burrow, or for Joe Burrow to not be a part of the conversation he has earned his way into being a part of. But you just got to watch the game.
He doesn't understand Chris Canty's incessant need to dismiss Burrow. I don't understand his incessant need to take away all blame. Now, again, I agree with the point that it's fine that he was sticking up to have those players, but then to say he was the best player in the world last year? I mean, he played well after the first 5 weeks. But come on. This is bananas. And so the point is, Bobby, here's the problem. That's fine if you want to go hard for Joe Burrow. But the energy he gives to stick up for Joe Burrow, the energy he gives to give excuses to Joe Burrow. How about this? How about when the Bengals played the Ravens? How did that first loss end in overtime?
Yeah, a pick.
He threw a pick.
Yeah.
To Kyle Hamilton. Thank you, Kyle Hamilton. How about against the Chiefs? Didn't he have a fumble in that game?
I'd have to
go
back.
He had a fumble in that game. It's bananas that you say no part. I don't even know that the most ardent Lamar fan would be like, okay, that nothing is absolutely nothing. Sometimes they act that way, but I don't think if it came down to it. And here's the thing. So that's the energy he has for Joe Burrow.
Hey,
but how about this?
Helping you out too, who was on the receiving end of that pick that he threw, Marlon.
Oh, it was Marlo. My bad, Marlo. I gave it to
Kyle. Should have had one against Cleveland to wrap that game up.
Oh, that was it. Yeah. That was it. Marlo, thank you. Love for
Thanks,
Marlo
chat.
there.
Appreciate
Thank you, chat. Nonetheless, it was the same quarterback that threw the pick. And so you like, if they had won that game, they probably would have made the playoffs, because that's a critical AFC North game. And so, but that's the energy, the excuse level he has for Joe Burrow. Meanwhile, I'm going to give us a little flashback to after Lamar Jackson's MVP. This is a flashback in 2020. Do you remember this, Bobby? I'm just going to let it play.
Kyler Murray right now was the quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens, we'd have much more confidence in them to win the Super Bowl. Period. We would. It wouldn't be a discussion. We wouldn't be sitting here talking like, you know what? Yeah, they can, because the quarterback's really good, because the team's really good, and everybody loves the color purple. It looks good on uniforms. He wouldn't have said all that. He would have been like, if Kyler Murray's the quarterback of his team, I see them in the AFC Championship going toe-to-toe, head-to-head with the Kansas City Chiefs, because he does add that extra dimension. And this is not knocking Lamar Jackson at all.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is knocking Lamar Jackson. You can't go and knock him and then say it's not knocking him. Okay, so for
Did
one
you have
guy,
the date on that, Sarah? Did you have the date?
that was 2020. I don't have the exact date, but it was 2020. It was the year
Coming
2020.
off his
MVP year.
MVP unanimous campaign.
Yeah. Yeah. So for one, he's the world's best quarterback. No part of the blame goes to him. But for Lamar, after an MVP year, give me Kyler Murray. Give me Kyler Murray over Lamar Jackson. I'm sorry, but listening to that, you can't take his quarterback ranking seriously.
Wow. That's a receipt that I had forgotten about, but I knew existed because it makes its rounds every time Ryan's on the wrong end of history, like he absolutely was on that one. That is horrific. And look, that's not to say that Kyler at that time, who had just come out of school, maybe like the year prior or that year, I think it was somewhere around there, didn't have a bunch of hype around him, but he was unproven. And guess what? Years later, he's still unproven at the professional level. He's an average quarterback, matter of fact. So,
and I got one more.
Way to dig that one up. Way to dig that one up.
I did see that making the rounds like a month ago, and so that's why I remembered it. But I got one more clip for you. And Mina Kimes just always brings facts to the table. This is before even Isaiah Likely went down. I think it was before. I think it was right before training camp was about to start across the NFL, and the ESPN crew was asked which quarterback of Lamar, Burrow, and Allen is best at making up for team deficiencies. Here's Mina Kimes and her logic of why it's Lamar Jackson.
Well, if we're expanding to 4, I would pick Patrick Mahomes. But if we're taking Patrick Mahomes out of the equation and we're just looking at Jackson, Allen, Burrow, I'm going with Lamar Jackson there. Last season, I would say they all overcame deficiencies to some degree. Joe Burrow had the best receivers. I think we all agree on that. Josh Allen, I feel, had the best offensive line. Lamar had the best running back tight ends. But the great thing about these quarterbacks is we can look at them over the course of more than just last season. And we're only a couple years removed from Lamar Jackson's best receivers being Devin Duvernay and Demarcus Robinson in terms of commanding the most targets. In fact, prior to 2022, after Hollywood Brown, who was inconsistent and struggled at times with availability, his top receiving targets were Duvernay and Willie Snead. So we have seen Lamar Jackson elevate, shall we say, a substandard cast. And look, Allen is close. It's very close with them. This came up a lot during the MVP debate this year. But when I watch Lamar Jackson and I watch this Ravens offense, I see a system, a scheme where Lamar is the sun that creates the gravity that it all rotates around. It's no coincidence that Derrick Henry, 31 years old, came off the worst season of his career and then had the best season of his career once he started playing with Lamar Jackson. His effect on the football field is undeniable. So he would be my answer for the guy. If I was building a team from scratch and I had to pick a guy who I think could do the most with least, it would be Lamar.
Ooh, from the top rope. Mina never be accused of not doing her homework. The way she talks at a national level to the detail that people like us would talk about the Ravens because we follow them everywhere, every day. First of all, Lamar is the sun that creates the gravity around him. How about nobody was talking last year except for local people like us saying Derrick Henry went from his worst career season in terms of yards per carry to his best. And then poor Duvernay and Snead got some strays in there, but it was just facts. I mean, that girl does her homework.
Wow. I am blown away by that. That was incredible. And I think one of our most loyal listeners, subscribers, Manny from Mexico City, is going to be fired up today because, Sarah, he is on day 3 of, as he puts it, politely reaching out to Mina through Twitter, attempting to book her for us. So,
oh, really?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
We literally, like, he's doing it totally on his own. We have not asked him or recruited him to do it, but obviously we will be thrilled to have her on. And if that right there isn't number one reason as to why, to your point, Sarah, that the simple yet time-consuming research that's required to go into the archives like that, study the rosters, understand what Lamar had at his disposal or didn't have at his disposal, and put that into the context of what he's been able to overcome compared to his peers, that was incredibly impressive.